Tell me again what we're finding here. The distance in between these 2 points. If you were standing at 5,2 and you walked to 3,8, that would be a distance. Here's a question. Is distance ever going to be negative? Are you ever going to have a negative answer? No. Even if you walk backwards, you still stretch out a tape measure. That's a positive number. Okay? Distance is always positive. Write that down in your notes. Distance is always positive. It means every single one of these answers needs to be a positive number. Always will be. Okay? Alright. Who can tell me the answer for number 1? Love it? Outstanding. Exactly right. 2 root 10. Very good. Alright, how about number 2 here? The second one. Logan?
Root 29.
Correct. The square root of 29. Here's a question. Do we have a way of checking this answer? How? Well, you really can't check it, as far as I know, other than doing it again. Right? That would be the only way to check it. You can't take square root 29 and plug it in back there and do some check. You know, unfortunately, the only way to check these would be to do it again. How about number 3? Anybody have the answer for number 3? Hannah? Outstanding. 4 root 10. Very good. And the last one. Anybody have the answer? Dylan? Correct. Good job. Square root 74. All right, raise your hand if you got all 4 right. Okay, very good. Raise your hand if you missed 1. All right, so most of you either got them all right or you missed 1. Anybody miss them all and want to see me work one of them out? Anybody got a question? All right, which one? Pick one. Sounds like you're doing, if you missed them all, you probably got some kind of, were you using a calculator or doing it by hand? All right, let's do them by hand. The square root of that number minus that number in parentheses. 3 minus 5 squared. Right? It'll always be that number minus that number squared. Plus always goes in the middle, right? And then I say that number minus that number. So I got 8 minus 2, and I got squared on the outside. So this is going to be the square root of negative 2 squared plus 6 squared. Right? So this works out to be 4 plus 36, or square root 40. Just like our other example. Okay? Will we leave our answer as root 40? No, we break it down into 2 root 10. 2 root 10. All right, questions? Anybody else have a question? You see what you got? You see what you did wrong? It's probably that one little error. Now that you got it fixed, you'll be okay.
I didn't square one.
You got to square them both. Okay? Yes. Save it till later. Save it till later. All right, so here we go on distance. How could they change things up instead of just giving you 2 points and asking you to find the distance? Well, how could they make this problem a little harder? Fractions, that's a good guess, but that's not it. Say it again.
They could give you the distance and ask you.
Very good. They're going to give you the distance. Write this down. They're going to give you the distance, and they're going to give you one of the points, 4, 1, and they're going to ask you to find the other point. Right? And they're going to say, okay, hotshot, if you know the distance and one of the points, can you go backwards, so to speak, and find the other point? These are the much harder problems. They're not that difficult. I can do them in about 4 or 5 steps. Okay? But you need to see me work one out, and then I'm going to let you try one. Okay? The first thing is you're going to use the formula, the exact same formula that we just got done using. That's good news. So we say D equals all of that. I'll actually write it down one more time. D equals, well, I got it written right there. So I'll leave it right there. There's the formula. So what does D equal? The square root of 52. So I'm going to write the square root of 52, just like that. Okay? Equals the square root of all that stuff over there. It's always that number minus that number. So it's going to be A minus 4 squared. x2 minus x1. A minus 4 in parentheses squared. What goes in between the parentheses? Plus, right? And then what goes in the second set of parentheses? Negative 3 minus what?
1.
Positive 1. y2 and y1. Up, you're exactly right. Squared. You're exactly right. So all I did, the very first step, would be to take what I know and plug it in. No different than the other 4 problems that most of you got them all right. Okay, now what? How do we start solving this? And let's look at what we're trying to do. Everybody's eyes up here. We've got A, and it's buried, right? It's underneath the radical. It's inside parentheses. It's squared. You got this stuff. You've got all this stuff on A. And we need to undo it. It's like a knot, right? And we've got to undo the knot so that A is by itself. That's what I'm trying to find. Down here somewhere, I want to know A equals 5 and maybe -7. Okay, or A equals 3 and maybe -2. Okay, I want to know what A can equal. What are the possible answers of A? All right, that's what I'm trying to find. So how do I undo it? How do I get A by itself? Well, the first thing I need to do is get rid of the radicals. How can I get rid of the radicals on both sides? Square what? You're right, but how do we say it? Square both sides. Write that in your notes. Step 1 is going to be square both sides. Always. Well, actually, step 1 was plugging it in. But your actual working step, your first step, is to square the left and square the right. What's nice about squaring both sides? What happens to the radicals? They just go away. This and this just go away. And so I have plain old 52. Okay, what happens on the right-hand side? I get A minus 4 squared plus. Now, I could just write all this stuff down, -3 minus 1 squared, or I can do 2 steps at one time. Right? I can go ahead and figure out what -3 minus 1 squared is going to be. What is -3 minus 1? -4. And what is -4 squared going to be? Positive 16. So I could write 16 right there, and I've done 2 steps at one time. Yay, we like that. Okay, makes life easier. Now, remember my goal. I'm trying to get A by itself. What do I need to do? Do I need to get rid of the 16? Do I need to get rid of the 4? Do I need to get rid of the square? What do I need to do? I got 3 things I got to get rid of.
Get rid of the 16.
16 first. The 16 moves over, and I get rid of it first. I subtract 16 from both sides, right? I get 36 equals A minus 4 squared. Okay, now what do I need to get rid of? Do I need to add 4, or do I need to get rid of the square first? How do I do that? What do I do to both sides?
Add a radical.
Square root, right? Write that down. At this point, and this is the same in every single problem, you square root both sides. Up here, we squared both sides to get rid of the radicals. Now we are square rooting both sides. All right, hold on, Savannah. I think you're one step ahead of me. We square root both sides, and I get A minus 4. I like writing on the left because I always like my variable on the left. What do we get on the other side? What do we have to remember to do, class? When you square root both sides, what do you have to remember to do?
Get rid of the second power.
No, nobody remembers?
How come your A minus 4?
I just wrote it over here on the left. I like my variable on the left. Nobody knows what to do when I square root both sides? All right, let's review. Hold on. Let's review. If I've got x squared is equal to 4, then what is x equal? 2. Everybody knows that. You can see that kind of conceptually. Everybody sees I square root both sides, I get x equals 2. But is there any other number that I could put in there and square it and get 4? I could also do -2. So when I square root both sides, what do I have to remember to do? And we've already talked about that. So you need to write that down. That could be a note card. Hint, hint, hint. On the front, it could say, what do you do when you square root both sides of an equation? Question mark. And you would flip it over, and what would it say? Add plus or minus. Right? Put the plus or minus in there. So when I'm at this step right here, and I've square rooted 36, I had better put plus or minus 6. Otherwise, I'm not going to get but half the answer. When you square root both sides, what must you put? You must put a plus or minus. And that's not a new concept. We've already done that. We solved quadratics by using square roots, and we had to add the plus or minus. Okay? Are you with me? Are we done? Is A by itself? No. What do we need to do? Add 4 to what? Both sides. Not to 6. We need to add 4 to plus or minus 6. What does that give us? It either gives us 10 or -2. Now, how in the world did I get 10 and -2?
Oh, because if it's a negative.
I did the positive scenario, and then what else did I do?
Negative.
You're exactly right. Say it again.
If you do -6 plus 4, you get -2.
So she's saying you do the positive scenario and you do the negative scenario and you get 2 answers. Yes?
When you square rooted both sides, what happened to your a minus 4? Like, how come you took it out parentheses?
The square and the square root cancel out and I just get a minus 4. That's the whole idea. That's why I am square rooting both sides. Good question. Anybody else? Yes?
So, like, you can't, like, just multiply a minus 4 by itself instead of square rooting?
You could, but you would end up with a quadratic, right? You would have a minus 4 and a minus 4, right? That gives you a squared minus 8a plus 16, right? So then you're going to have to factor and solve, and you're going to have to move the 6 over there. So you subtract 6 from both sides. It's actually plus or minus 6. So, I mean, that's a lot more difficult. It's a lot easier to square root both sides. You wouldn't move the plus or minus 6 over. You just move this over and you get a squared minus 8a plus 10, right? Then you hope that factors into a minus 10 and a plus 2, which it does. And that gives you a equals 10 and negative 2. It's doable that way, but most people would say factoring like this is harder than square rooting both sides. Okay? Good question. Anybody else? All right, let's let you try one. I wish I could leave this up there, but I want you to try one. You should have it in your notes. All right, so here we go. D equals 17. When I square both sides, what's that 17 going to turn into? What is 17 squared? Do you know that off the top of your head? Huh? You should. You should have that memorized. 5, 7 is your 1 point, and negative 3b is your other point. What is your goal in this problem? What is the directions going to say? Find all the possible solutions of b. Okay, find b. All right, try this problem at your desk. Try this problem at your desk. I'll give you a few minutes. Try this problem at your desk. First step, you don't know what to do, plug it in. At least plug it into the formula.